you to approach this in a very serious manner, and without strategies or without implementation, no matter how good your ideas is, it will be not very effective. So the point is that we need to have these two ideas or these two components in synergy, right? So we'll do that. And before we do this, let's start with a question that is something which you would be aware despite not having prepared everything. So it is going to be a very generic question. So I'll want you to take 5 or 10 minutes and try to write down the approach of this, okay? And then from here we'll develop what can be done to further streamline the process. So take 10 minutes, write the approach. Yes, shall we discuss? Okay. So did you understand the demand of the question? Does it require extraordinary content to write this? Even on the basis of your existing content, you could definitely write this answer. So it ultimately boils down to how do you apply your knowledge, okay? Existing knowledge. So would anyone want to try? Yes. Just wait a second. Huh. Yes.
It could be started by Franklin D. Roosevelt's statement that ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for the country. That would sum as the definition for patriotism.
Yes.
Then we can approach the civilian aspect of patriotism through our PESTEL framework.
Yes.
That is what a civilian can do in political, social, economic aspects. Now, while it's asked for us to illustrate, we can also give, we can quote fundamental duties there.
Yes.
Let's say when we are talking about environment or culture, respecting or protecting our cultural ring there, not writing stuff there. That could be in an environmental aspect. Then a technological aspect could be upskilling yourself and contributing to the nation's GDP. Economic aspect could be not evading taxes and paying them regularly. Then social could be not practicing caste discrimination and religious discrimination.
Perfect. Very good. Very good. Anyone else would like to try? Yes.
So first of all, we can say that nation is above all. So starting with this concept that in India we have seen in many wars have participated and for the countries they died, and we give the term Shaheed to them. So with that we can elaborate that how much respect we show to our soldiers and army personals, and in respect of civil perspective, as he said about Article 51A, we can talk about the 11 fundamental duties. If we are doing our own duties, then at the end we are doing the duties of the nation, and we are contributing towards the country with more like one
encouraging brotherhood and the readiness to give our life. Maybe everyone is not there, reached there, or maybe it is the last thing that we can talk about, but in day-to-day life there are millions of things that we can do to show patriotism towards our country.
Great, good, good. Okay, see here, if you look at it, the first sentence is about the context, and they have also mentioned this part as well, in the context of defense service, and this was asked in 14, sorry, right? So at that point of time, we did not know that Operation Sindoor would have taken place. So definitely, we can start with some introduction where we can talk about or we can integrate current affairs. Definitely, you can start with a quote if you can recall. Quote is an excellent way of starting an introduction. Okay. Or you can start off with anything that you can recall of in terms of patriotism or belong to a larger whole. Okay. But sometimes nationalism can become exclusionary in nature as well, in the sense that you start comparing or thinking that people from different nations are your adversary. And in excessive form, it is called as jingoism. At the external level and xenophobia at the internal level, right? But that's not the mandate of the question, but this will help you understand the demand of the question, okay? Then here, you have been mentioned about what patriotism demands, and here they are asking you, according to you, what does patriotism imply in everyday civil life? So as you have already mentioned, that here we can talk about various framework in terms of political life, political domain. It can be about participation in elections, and not just participation in elections. And again, you have to justify it as well. Justify, there are two things here. You have to, whatever points that you have mentioned, you have to provide your reason. So justification means you need to provide the reasons. Argument, okay? So here, important thing is, maybe you can write 2 or 3 points here, or maybe just 1 point. The important point here is that you need to provide certain argument. Which part of the syllabus it is taken from? Which part of the paper it is from, this question? Is it from society? It is from General Studies paper 4, ethics, okay? So if it is from ethics, if you can link it to a particular syllabus thing which is there. So if you, on the basis of your knowledge of ethics or the syllabus of ethics, can you tell me from what part of the syllabus this question is taken from? Sorry? Indian society. No, from ethics, integrity, and absolute, we have a topic, right? So from that paper, from what part or what section it is taken from? No, citizen charter will be there in GS paper 2, or probity in governance. Emotional intelligence, okay. Or maybe because there is also a component of moral thinkers as well. See, any serious aspirant will be able to generate certain dimensions, such as political dimension, economic dimension, social dimension, environmental dimension, and whatever you are supposed to do as a citizen, you can talk about here. For example, in the environmental dimension, you can talk about waste management, you can talk about segregating of waste, or you can talk about using energy judiciously, right? Or maybe using E20 blended petrol or things like that, right? So again, you can talk about a lot of examples and say, and you need to connect it with the larger theme. So here, this participation is connected to the larger theme of democracy. Okay? So in that particular question, they will not tell you exactly how you are supposed to think along that line. For example, in economic, many of the students will just provide the point only, they will not provide the justification. And this is where you can get extra marks without preparing anything extra. Just by giving the justification why it is important and by linking it to the broader idea. For example, for polity with respect to democracy, for economy with respect to enhancing the public finance of the government, right? And improving the capacity of the government to ensure inclusive development. Because you already know that there are studies about the idea of Mahatma Gandhi, that what exactly it means to be a patriot, as opposed to a nationalist, okay? Fine. So this is what you're supposed to do. This is the process that you're supposed to do in 7 minutes of time. You need to think, you need to organize, and then you need to present. Thankfully, it does not, in this particular question, I think you do not require any mapping, or it does not require you to present it in a different manner, but just by writing the argument, that would be good enough, okay? But getting to this point requires a lot of practice, and we'll be going to discuss what exactly are the step-by-step approach that you can take to go from a beginner to an expert level. And for this, we'll first identify the key mistakes that students do while they prepare for mains, okay? Because without understanding the key mistakes, we will not be able to identify how can we improve upon them. So awareness is the most essential thing. The first mistake that students do during mains, and I'm not talking about during answer writing, I'm talking about the general approach or general preparation for mains. And this is very important because mains is a different beast altogether. It requires different approach, right? So the problem is, first problem that a lot of students make is in terms of understanding that mains is same as prelims, or preparing or approaching mains in a similar manner as you are supposed to appear for prelims. So in prelims, let me show you through an example. So if a person who has prepared very well for prelims and he understands everything with respect to polity or all the major subjects from where questions come at the prelims level, and whenever he is not prepared in terms of mains way or the way in which he's supposed to prepare for mains, and this question comes, discuss the role of Election Commission in ensuring free and fair elections in India, right? Role of the Election Commission. Most of the times, if you have prepared for prelims, you will start looking for the facts. What fact do I know about Election Commission of India? You'll start to know that, okay, this is from, you list down Article 325 to 329. You'll talk about all the powers. But what you will not do is you will link it to the broader idea, right? In terms of how it seeks to deepen the democracy at various levels. Okay? And also ensuring that the democracy becomes not just procedural in nature, but also substantive in nature. The more important thing is that your focus will be more on the analysis part. Analysis means that you will break down the entire topic into its various components and think that is this thesis statement to be taken at the face value. So whenever a statement is given to us, when it comes to mains, we need to look at it from various perspectives. We need to look at it from the perspective that, okay, this is going to be true, then how it is going to be true, and what statements would make it not true, right? So that is called basically analyzing from various perspectives. So here you will talk about the challenges as well. You'll talk about the money power, media influence, you'll talk about defections. You will also integrate the SIR exercise as well, right? And all the challenges that Election Commission of India is currently facing, including the charges that the opposition members have also leveled against the institution. You can talk about the Supreme Court case recently. You can refer to the reform reports. You can talk about the ways to improve the functioning of Election Commission of India as well. So here, what you are doing is you are looking at things from a holistic perspective. You're not just looking at mentioning or dumping down the points. This is what happens with students who are only preparing from the prelims mindset, okay? That they're only obsessed about the facts. You do not go beyond how you are going to utilize the facts for analysis, okay? Then without fact, without analysis, the answer will be superficial. It will not have any major arguments. So what arguments are you talking about? So arguments essentially comes when you are using facts plus you are indicating a trend. So from the facts that is present to you, what kind of trend are you able to decipher, right? And then what kind of justification you are giving, okay? So that is very essential, and a lot of people do not understand this part as well. The second major problem that a lot of students make or feel while preparing for mains is that their notes or their preparation is very generic in nature. It is not aligned with the syllabus. It is not aligned with the previous year question. And for this, we need to be aware that we need to look at things from this holistic perspective in terms of knowing the syllabus. So for example, if I'm preparing for pressure groups, I need to look at the syllabus, what exactly it says about what is expected of us to study about pressure group. Then what we need to do is we need to go and look into the previous year questions. What kind of questions has come in the past from previous year? This will give us various dimensions. Dimensions to prepare. In terms of, they can tell us what are pressure groups. So that will be our first level of preparation. Then role played by pressure group, challenges faced, types, etc., and how to improve or how to improve their functioning. Every year, you'll see that questions will be along certain dimensions in combination of these things only. So once you have done your content building in alignment with this syllabus, then in alignment with the previous year questions, and then you have added certain facts from the current affairs, you are good to go. You have done whatever is required to appear at mains. And this part is something that a lot of students do not do. They are not even aware of what you are supposed to study, and they have not even looked at the syllabus. So this is very important that you go through the syllabus very holistically. For example, this question, urban floods. So you need to prepare not just the meaning of urban floods and the recent trend that is happening. You should understand the underlying causes, both the natural causes and the man-made or anthropogenic causes, right? So once you need to understand this part, Then you can take up some case studies as well. For example, recently, even today, we are seeing that in Mumbai, there is a splurge of urban floods there. So again, you can take down and add certain case study here. You can write about certain committees, what exactly, how they have diagnosed this problem. And time to time, various committees get formed to look at various problems, right? And then you can take up some of their key recommendations. What are they suggesting to change the way we are handling urban flooding or management of urban flooding? Of course, there will be certain things which will be suggested by National Disaster Management Agency or authority, but again, on top of that, you are also adding the recommendation of certain committees. Then you need to take up some of these schemes that the government has taken to address this problem, along with some of the way forward that you can talk about. So you are, again, what you are doing is you are going for a 360-degree approach for this. And for this, you need to know a lot of the syllabus accurately. You need to know the previous year questions, and you need to know the current affairs. Again, if you study it in isolation, it will make not a lot of sense. And the problem is most of the notes that we prepare are bulky in nature. They are not structured properly. You will find that there are so many points which are not necessary to be prepared. And it is also not easy to revise all these points, right? So it is very essential that we structure our notes properly. We make sure that it is, because at the end of the day, you are supposed to write an answer for 150 word or 250 words, okay? So it needs to be structured and usable. The third mistake is not practicing answer writing. See, before 2014, UPSC did not have like these many questions, right? And 2013, the pattern changed, and after the very first time, they asked 25 questions in a span of 3 hours. And that was a very challenging thing for a lot of students to do, because earlier they were used to the pattern where they were supposed to just attempt a very small amount of question in same amount of time. So irrespective of how much you knew, it would be very important that you're able to demonstrate your knowledge in a very short span of time. And this is very much tied down to the nature of job. So there are two skills which are required here. One is contraction of idea. Right? And second one is expansion of ideas. Contraction of idea basically mean that you have been given or you have prepared something in a very voluminous manner, but the demand from the examiner is not exactly to tell everything that you have studied, portion of that. Then how do you explain the entire thing in a very short manner? Now this skill cannot come unless you have done multiple number of answer writing practices. The second one is expansion of idea, and this is basically what you will be doing or what you will need to do during essay preparation. In essay, you're supposed to write 1,000 to 1,200 words of 2 essays in a span of 3 hours. And during essay, you need to generate a lot of points. You need to expand your ideas a lot. So here, at the UPSC level answer writing, you need to have or possess these two skills, contraction of ideas and expansion of ideas. Along with, there are other aspects as well in terms of putting your arguments in a very cohesive manner so that the person who is reading your ideas is able to get what you have said. Okay, it's brainstorming before you appear for the examination. And you cannot prepare brainstorming without preparing answer writing. So this becomes very important. That first thing is, knowledge does not translate into marks without practice. So you may have read a lot of theories, a lot of books with respect to moral philosopher or maybe polity, but unless you have done structured thinking in terms of answer writing and timed answer writing, you will not be able to express your ideas in that short span of time. And this basically leads to scattered, incoherent, incomplete answers. Time crunch is there, 7 minutes per answer. So time contribution during Gandhian movement was their contribution, or you can also further create other phases as well. You can write certain examples along each of these stages. And not only that, you can also provide a critical analysis. For example, if the question is about highlight or critically evaluate the contribution of women in freedom struggle. So which means that you are not supposed to take that statement at face value. You'll also have to generate certain points which counter this statement. How do you counter that statement? By going through some of the critical analysis part, including the limitations that they had and the limitations that they could not take it to a very larger level, right? And then you can conclude it with linking it to the present day women in politics, including, if you can, about the 106th Amendment, right? So make sure that you do not confine your ideas of, say, polity to the question of polity only. You can use it in the questions of history also. But this will only happen if you have properly brainstormed and written such questions before. Next part is about current affairs. And with respect to current affairs, there are two extremes that we generally observe. There will be one student who would like to insert or stuff current affairs with random current examples in all the questions, whether it makes sense or whether it does not make sense. The second part of the aspirant or second kind of the aspirants will be that they will write generic textbook answers without any linkages. So that both of these things are to be avoided, we need to take a balanced approach, where current affairs is to be treated just like a spice in our food. It cannot be too much, it cannot be too less, right? So again, we need to be very much assured about that, how we are taking it. For example, if a question is on food security and linkages on climate change, then a traditional answer, a static answer, will generally talk about PDS, MSP, NFSA, which is generally found in any of the textbook. But if you are adding current affairs, you will also be adding the IPCC reports, you'll be writing about FAO reports, you'll be talking about certain recommendations with respect to monsoon disruptions and how it disrupts the food security, the nutritional security. You'll talk about some of the contemporary relevance, and it will provide you a lot of credibility in your answer, right? So these are the things that you must do. Next. I think this is one of the most challenging aspect. Understand the importance of PYQs, but they do not know how do we analyze PYQs. The problem is any casual aspirant, they read PYQs individually, but they do not try to establish the kind of pattern that is required. So pattern recognition is very much important. Even artificial intelligence does that. So we need also to include that pattern recognition with us. And for that, what we need to do is we need to take up various topics together and then identify the dimensions and try to link it with their current affairs. What kind of dimensions can be asked, and try to anticipate as well. Predict and anticipate the questions that can be asked, okay? For example, if you analyze the questions that have come, topic of judiciary, it has come in various years, 2015, 18, 21, 23. Most of the question is about the idea of judicial independence versus judicial accountability, two conflicting ideas. And every year, in fact, you'll see that you will have a lot of judgments with respect to 3 judges' cases. You will have judicial corruption debates, including the recent Justice Verma controversy, right? So again, you know that this is part of your static part as well, judicial independence, judicial accountability. You also know that this is going on in current affairs as well. So make sure that you have everything all at once, okay? So let me tell you what can be done to get mains ready. And it is very essential that you start your preparation as early as possible, because as we discussed earlier, there are hardly 2 months or 2.5 months from prelims and mains now. So unless you start working on it, unless you start building content unless you start integrating current affairs now and start practicing writing now, it will not be possible for you to do well at the mains level. And mains is the ultimate test of your exam. So here, if you look at, it's already August, September, October, and December. After December, all of you will already start preparing for prelims, okay? Because prelims is also very important. So to get mains ready, you need to make sure that at least you have completed your significant part of general studies now, right? In terms of content building, certain structure or framework, with PYQs, and then current affairs. Okay. So what you can do is, you can leave general studies paper 1 for the last, because you know there is significant overlap of GS paper 1 with that of prelims. You have history, you have geography, which come directly as part of your prelims. In fact, art and culture, modern, medieval, everything comes as part of your prelims. So it's a good idea that you keep your GS paper 1 mains preparation for later half, for December, okay? For here, August, September, I would suggest you to start from GS paper 3, okay? Because GS paper 3 has 6 subjects, or 5 or 6 subjects altogether, not just economy. It has disaster management, internal security, all these topics, which you will not be studying for the prelims. So make sure that you complete your mains preparation subject by subject till this time, okay? Then maybe till October, you can complete your GS paper 2, and October, November, you can cover your essay plus ethics. If you do this, you will already be above a lot of students, okay? Now the problem is, a lot of students have confusion with respect to essay, that now we are seeing a lot of philosophical essays. So how do we prepare for that? Now there's a simple solution. In essay, you already have to study about moral philosophers. You have to study about a lot of abstract ideas. So if you combine the preparation together, it will save you a lot of time. In fact, what I would also suggest you is that GS2 governance can be prepared alongside ethics in administration. Okay, so make sure that you prepare your similar topics together. Try to check or try to see from the PYQs what kind of questions are coming in the past, and try to club it together, okay? So this is the thing that you should prepare. Again, I'm giving you this basic framework. You can have a different framework as well, depending on what you want, but make sure that you are able to complete the content part at least till December, okay? Do not well cover your optional or half of optional by this time, because it may not be possible for you. Some of you would be giving it for the very first time, so it may be not possible for you to cover everything all at once. So make sure at least you cover your optional, at least half of your optional till this time. Because even after this, in the 2 months' time, all you would be doing is writing answers and then preparing for optional. So this will definitely give you a lot of advantages. Now let me tell you what can be done here in terms of getting mains ready. First thing is, and this is the most important part, a lot of students think that this is not that valuable, but this advice will help you a lot if you understand the syllabus minutely, right? So first thing that you need to do is to break down the syllabus subject by subject. For example, what exactly is the topic from modern history? So you should know everything about, say, freedom struggle, its various stages, and important contributions from different parts of the country. So they have already written different parts of the country. A lot of people will be aware about the contribution from North India. But are you aware of the contribution from Northeast India? Are you aware of the contribution from South India or West India? So you need to break it down into those things. Second is post-independence. Again, from here, the UPSC has not asked a lot of questions, but you need to identify key important trends here. That what are the key important trends that continue to resonate even now? For example, land reforms. Earlier, there was a different, okay? So again, understand this term. Then physical geography, you have physical geography, you have economic geography, you have social geography. So understand each and every key term. Geophysical phenomena, you have all these phenomena such as earthquakes, tsunami, volcanic activities, cyclones, etc. Now this is a very dangerous word, etc., which includes everything under the sun. So cloudburst will be part of this, flash floods will be part of this, anything else will be part of this. So whatever is in news, at least you should have certain idea about it, right? Then Indian heritage and culture, world history, society. So this will make sure that you know each and everything, like you have 100-page notes for each and every topic that is mentioned. That is the minimum requirement. Same when it comes to GS paper 2, have this kind of approach where you have listed all the topics separately. A lot of people think that GS paper 2 is only about polity and IR. It is far from it. If you analyze the paper, questions have been coming from governance and social justice a lot, and these are the easiest questions to solve. Because if you analyze these questions, they are largely static in nature. Hardly there are several changes. Questions do not even change from its orientation. In fact, this year, one of the toughest questions that came in GS paper 2 was about models of e-governance. Models of e-governance, and that is part of your syllabus. Yes, governance, e-governance, applications, models. So within this, they had asked about interactive service model. So the point is that every term which is mentioned in the syllabus, if they have, UPSC has already asked, it is definitely important. If they have not asked, it is equally important or even more important, because it will definitely be tested, right? So make sure that you have one-pager notes for all of these topics. And these are the important low-hanging fruits: governance here, social justice here. Now you'll see that there are certain topics which are common to topics, like the concept of poverty and hunger. Poverty is not just mentioned as part of GS paper 2, it is also part of GS paper 1, society. See here, role of women, women's organizations, population, poverty and developmental issues. So poverty is mentioned not just in paper 2, but it is also part of paper 2 as well, paper 1, paper 2, and also here as well. Okay? So make sure that you know about all these terms, whatever is mentioned here. For example, you should know about what are the investment model, what are the infrastructure status that we have, what is the meaning of government budgeting, what is the meaning of gender budgeting. A lot of time UPSC asks questions which are not directly linked, but somewhat can be extracted from it. Now this is again a very important topic, agriculture. So any major development which happens with respect to agriculture becomes part of, or is very important. But what you need to do is you need to link it with that topic. Major development with respect to food processing, you need to link it with this. For example, scope, significance, location, upstream and downstream requirements, supply chain management. So it is not just a question of economics, but it is a question also of supply chain operations, right? So you need of operations as well. Land reforms in India, they have just written this theme. They have not explained it, but so you have to deconstruct it on the basis of the questions that have come in the past. Fine. More or less, you need to understand this part as well. Science and technology, environment, disaster, internal security. Make sure that you know each and every topics really well. For ethics, make sure that you understand that it has 3 major components. First component is essentially about philosophy, moral philosophy. Ask you to use this or that particular moral philosopher. Just take a look at the previous year questions and see what kind of philosophers they are asking. In fact, in the very inception of this exam, they asked about John Rawls, right? And they had asked about concepts. Definitely, they keep on asking about Mahatma Gandhi. They have asked about Aristotle. Socrates, etc. So again, the point is that just do this mapping from the previous year question, what kind of scholars they have already asked. This will give you an indication that, okay, at least I need to prepare these scholars at least, and their key ideas. Just understand their key ideas. You can in fact use ChatGPT to just highlight that, okay, tell me the key ideas of John Rawls, which can be used in administration, which can be used in this ideas, right? So what are the key philosophy, all these things, right? In GS paper 4 as well, even though it may or may not be explicitly written there. So whenever you write any answer in GS paper 2 for governance, you can use ethical dimension as well. That is the takeaway, okay? And for this, you need to analyze the syllabus really well, along with incorporating the previous year questions, okay? Methods that is mentioned here, fine. So this is part of your assignment for today, is that go back home and write down the syllabus in your own handwriting. Do not copy paste it. Do not take a printout of it. Write it in any piece of paper. It will not exactly be in the same manner, but the essence of the questions will be same, okay? Then it can be used to refine your notes, to add dimension. For example, if you have not prepared models of e-governance as part of your GS2 notes, then if question has come, then definitely you have to integrate that as part of your notes. Okay, so and not just service model, but all these models, such as broadcast model, etc. So again, try to make sure that you are using this question paper to broaden your understanding as well. Try to expand your knowledge as well, and try to predict what kind of questions can be come in the past, and link current affairs to previous year questions. Again, all of these are important. Third is, like, let me show you some examples here in terms of urban floods. So we know that urban floods is an ongoing concern, and UPSC has been asking this question. Like last year also it had asked a question, causes. So we must understand the causes of urban flood. That is the first thing, first takeaway. Features. Features of two such major floods in the last 2 decades. So they are giving us this liberty to track the urban flooding from last 2 decades. In fact, we have so many data, right? Then they're asking us to describe the cause of urban floods due to, this is a statement or a context. So this is not a question, it is a context which helps you understand the demand of the question, okay? Discussing the reasons, and they had asked a question on causes as well. Causes will be same as reasons, okay? For urban floods. Highlight, and again they have given one of the reasons again. They have first given the reason. This reason they have given due to high intensity rainfall. So first you need to explain this part, then you need to explain other parts, isn't it? To reduce the risk during such event. Now they are asking you a very specific part to ensure or to highlight the preparedness. Now when it comes to disaster management, it generally involves 3 things. First is pre-disaster movement or activities that you take before disaster. Then there is during disaster, and then after disaster or post-disaster. So the preparedness comes under which of these cycles? Pre-disaster, isn't it? So here they are asking you specifically to write about pre-disaster. And there would be a lot of students who would write about everything under the sun. So if you are able to understand that, okay, they are asking about this part, then you will be asking very specific answer, okay? And here they have also, again, you will be able to understand the thing here, that what kind of dimensions are they asking. Then account for the huge flooding of million cities in India, including the smart ones like Hyderabad and Pune. So account for is exactly as give reasons for. So this is also reasons. Suggest lasting remedial measures. Remedial measures can be anything during pre-disaster also, post-disaster also, mostly. And it is saying lasting. So it should be something which is long-term based, not short-term based, long-term based. Okay? So understanding each and every keyword is very important so that you write specific answers. But the takeaway from this is that if you analyze all the questions all at one place, and then you prepare your notes then it will save you a lot of time because you have already prepared the most important one. So if you had prepared about the context, the causes, the underlying reasons or the ways in which it can be reduced question with ease. So even though this question came in 2024, if you had analyzed this, this will definitely help you answer question on the recent question. Next is preparing framework. Okay, because framework help us, or they are basically a mental model. It helps us to think in a structured manner. And most of us are aware of certain basic approach like pestle approach or Pascal approach, right? So how do you approach or how do you apply this, and in what context, in which kind of questions you can apply what kind of things? So for example, if a question is on climate change, is not only an environmental challenge, but also a socio-economic challenge. Productivity, infrastructure damage, energy transition cost. Then in terms of environmental, which you don't need to write here, but still you can break it down into biodiversity loss, sea level rise, extreme weather, and then you can give some examples. Technological, you can talk about need for renewable energy, carbon capture, early warning systems. Right? So again, the point is, first you need to prepare various framework. And this is one of the framework. The second framework would be in terms of past, present, future, in terms of highlighting the evolution of center-state relations. So if you want to talk about how the center-state relations have evolved, I can talk about what happened during a certain time. For example, from the independence to 1960s, then from 1960s to 1990s, and from 1990s to the present context. Or if I want to highlight the impact of e-governance in India, or the impact of, say, civil services in India. Discuss the evolution of civil services in independent India. So what will be the time periods that you will consider? Right. Okay, that would be one. So evolution of civil services in India. What are the major changes that have happened?
Make sure subject matter specialists enter the civil services. Also, we could take example of how government has created specific civil services like Indian Economic Service, Indian Engineering Service, because.
So you're talking about functional
Yeah.
categorization. Okay, that could be one. What else? Sorry? एक second.
I mean separation of power, separating executive power and judicial power, which happened in.
Okay, yeah, that could also be said. Yes. Definitely. Yes, good point. See, at the very basic level, like you all are right, but what you can say is that if I want to talk about some of the important time frame, even LPG reforms, and how did it change the way civil servants function? Yes, very good. So basically, during the initial stages, India had adopted a socialist or mixed pattern of economy, and that got a lot of power to the state. And the civil servants are those who essentially had the power on behalf of the state. So they were essentially the ones who were implementing all the policies that the government had taken upon itself. So here, at this point of time, it was highly centralized in nature, and it was very much rule-driven or procedural. In fact, it is also called the basic, right? Which behaved or which functioned in secrecy. So secrecy and rules were the dominant or predominant characteristics of civil services during this period of time. After 1991, there were a lot of reforms, and as a result of reforms, transparency were introduced in terms of working of the civil services. They were also made a lot of accountable in terms of various tools like RTI, right? Then another thing happened that you mentioned about 73rd and 74th Amendment, which also gave people stakeholdership in making governance or in terms of participation in governance. So again, governance became more decentralized. So from centralization, it became decentralized. Again, a lot of people can contest this fact because it has not been in the way it is being desirable. But again, the overlying trend is that it has become decentralized. Then what is the changes which have happened now? E-governance. So e-governance essentially has transformed the way civil services are now functioning. It is making it more accountable. You have tools like social audit, citizen charter. Then you have other stakeholders in governance, including the NGOs, including the public charitable trust. All these stakeholders are also working along with the state for the socio-economic development. In fact, the Prime Minister in the Independence Day speech also mentioned that in order for us to be a developed country by 2047, we need contribution from not just the state actors, but also the non-state actors, the non-NGOs as well, right? So here it has become more. And now we are focusing more on improving the capacity of the civil servants in terms of initiatives like Mission Karmyogi. And also improving the quality through lateral entry. So again, the thing is that you need to know this thing holistically, and then you need to find out that what could be the three major or some of the elements or time frames in which I can pinpoint the major developments to. The same thing can be with respect to evolution of land reforms in India or evolution of women organization in India, right? All these things can be written like this. So you need to understand that what are the major changing thing that happened during this period of time, and then you can categorize it like this, okay? So the point is that you need to have certain framework. One is PESTEL, the second one is in terms of past, present, future. So for this, you need to know about world history. You can use examples from world history, you can use examples from Indian history as well, right? All these things. Then third thing is that you can prepare stakeholder-based framework. Now stakeholder-based framework is that you need to understand that any particular decision has different impact on different stakeholders. For example, if a question is on should government resort to farm loan waivers as a solution to agrarian distress, then you need to identify that there will be different impact on different stakeholders. Here, you can see that on farmers, there will be short-term relief versus long-term debt cycle. Also, you'll know that there will be some farmers who had already paid their debt. What happens to those farmers? Because they will be disincentivized to further pay their loans on time. The same argument was also provided during the time when US government wanted to provide waivers to those who have taken student loans for college. So again, that would create certain disincentive as well. So we look at things from a very narrow prism, but the real thing is that there are several implications that we need to take into account. The second impact here would be on government, especially it will add to its fiscal burden. It will go against the FRBM targets. It will basically be increasing populism, and it will be against reforms because you need to take long-term reforms to improve agriculture. Then there will be banks, impact on banks, that the NPAs will be on rise. There will be issue of financial discipline. Consumers may face issues of food security. There can be inflation risk. Then with taxpayer, again, they will complain that their taxes are redistributed for purpose that did not sanctify. So again, there are so many things that we need to take into account, okay? And the same approach can be used for case studies as well. So case studies, ethics, and society. So here, when it comes to society, we need to make sure that we are dividing the society or the various actors of society. Okay.
Then we could take the impact of globalization on children, the workforce in general, how adults are impacted, how women are impacted.
Good. Any other approach? See, one approach is very well like in terms of stakeholders. So you'll categorize or you'll differentiate among different stakeholders. So in a society, you have different stakeholders, including the children. Then you have women, senior citizens, vulnerable groups such as PWD, persons with disabilities, scheduled caste communities, scheduled tribe communities, etc. In fact, you can also write PVTGs, right, etc., etc., or young population or adolescents. So if the question is on impact of globalization on Indian society, it's a very broad topic. So one thing is that you can break it down into various stakeholders and see what exactly is the impact here. And here what you can do is you can talk about one positive impact and one negative impact. Give an example of some of the positive impact and then some example or some evidence or data related to negative impact. That could be one approach. The other approach could be you can just start with a generic positive impacts. You can write something like this. Then you talk about some negative impacts. Then you can generate further points. And here, within here, you can take into consideration various social agents. So these are called social agents. Because they generally constitute the society, right? So this is again another framework. So the point is that we need to create certain framework that will help us to create or have certain mental model that will basically help us with the brain fog that happens during exam. We are speechless or we do not have points to write during exam. So what can be done for this? We can have certain framework, right? The fourth thing is about taking mock tests. So we need to practice whatever we have discussed. And the best way to practice is taking mock test in a timed manner. Because if you are writing tests at the comfort of your home, you are taking 4 or 5 hours to write, you may end up topping that exam, the mock test, but that will not very much helpful for you. What you need to do is to go and take test in exam like conditions without having your mobile phones for to distract you, right? And make sure that you get certain feedback as well. The feedback will help you understand what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. Are you first able to complete the paper on time? That is the first thing that you need to check. Second thing is, are you able to understand the demand of the question or not? The problem with a lot of students is that they read one keyword and they completely generate their point or their answers based on that one keyword, but the essence of the question could be different. So the important thing is first that you complete the paper. Second, you complete in such a way that you are only answering what is required and not writing what you know. So this is the fundamental thing that you should practice. Third is that you are able to write above average answer to each of the questions. You are able to write some exceptionally well answers, and you are able to use all the important components of a good answer. So we'll discuss the major good components of an answer very shortly, but make sure that we also get a feedback of your answer. Because what happens is whenever you write an answer, we get emotionally attached to it. Right? We think that this is the best answer that could perhaps be written, but the point is that we need to get certain feedback, maybe from mentor or maybe from any other student as well. That will help us to identify some of the key mistakes. If they're not able to understand first your writing, you need to work on that. If you're not able to understand the demand of the question, you need to work on that. If you're not giving any major argument, you need to work on that. If you're not justifying or you're not giving any evidence, examples, you need to work on that. So this will help you. Writing mock frequently will help you with all those problems, right? And for this, we have a CLAPS framework, which is basically C stands for content. Content is both your generic content and specific content. So for every topic, you need to prepare certain generic content, right? Generic, for example, question on democracy. So you should have certain generic content prepared if you want to write a good answer on democracy. For example, you can prepare a quote on democracy. You can put up certain rankings or certain indices prepared for democracy. Some examples of areas where best democratic practices are being followed. So certain generic points you need to prepare. Then this is specific point which can be from the analysis of the PYQs and from the analysis of the syllabus. So this is something that you need to do. L is for language. The language need not be the level of Shashi Tharoor, but it should be such that an average person is able to understand. Class, I would say NCERT level language is good enough, right? So it should be generally grammatically correct. And recently we have also seen that students make a lot of spelling mistakes, which is fine if you do it in moderation. But if you continuously make spelling mistakes, then perhaps the examiner will get irritated and deduct your marks. So make sure that you also put attention to this. This is basically called as a hygiene factor. So make sure you have basic hygiene when it comes to language. Just basic, okay? A stands for approach. What approach are you following? So basically what it translates into when it comes to answer writing is that have you been able to understand the context of the question or not? Context is something that is bigger than the question. It is essentially connecting it to the larger theme. It can also be the reason why a question has been coming. It can be because it is related to current affairs. So you need to understand context because it is the context that drives a question. So you need to understand what is the larger theme. So we'll discuss this in the next class. How do we understand the context and how do we determine the theme on the basis of the context? P essentially is for presentation. So presentation essentially means how are you conveying your information or your understanding of the topic to the examiner? What are the tools that you are using? So the first tool, of course, will be your handwriting. So the presentation part is not just about making diagrams, making flowcharts, or all those things. It starts with your handwriting. Then it starts with how well your points are organized, how much space are you giving for each paragraph, all these things. So all these things may appear to be meaningless as of now, but they play a very important role. Then S stands for the structure. Any good answer needs to be logically structured. It means that it should start from a beginning, then there should be the demand, all the demand of the question should be met, and then there shall be a conclusion for a logical flow. We don't have to be Christopher Nolan, and we do not make it complicated for the examiner, right? So make sure that you are providing everything in a simplest form possible, in a linear way. Okay, so it has to be in the simplest form, and for this, all of you would be aware of this framework: IBC, introduction, body, conclusion. But the challenge arises from the fact that there are several ways of introduction. There are several ways of writing a conclusion. What kind of introduction should be written for what kind of question? So this next part is about brainstorming. And brainstorming exercise is very important because it will help us to deconstruct a question. And a lot of students do not try to do this because it is somewhat of a difficult exercise in the initial time. But if you have done it for a long or a large number of questions, this exercise will be very simple for you in the days to come. So here the idea is, do not start with any assumption. Do not start with any assumption that the question is tough, the question is simple. A question is a question, you have to solve the question, okay? And for that, you need to first understand the context of the question, which basically translates into why the question has been asked. Sometimes there will be no context at all. Question will be something that appears very random in nature, that is totally fine. But more or less, there will always generally will be a context. Context will be basically, it will tie you to a larger idea or things that are happening in the current affairs. There will be some questions, especially in polity and governance or even in IR, where it is very difficult to analyze how many subparts are to be written, right? So here we need to practice this for both direct and for indirect questions. We need to take a reasonable risk here as well in terms of identifying the several parts of the question. And this basically happens, for example, if I ask you the question on analyze the impact of poverty on education. So analyze the impact of education on poverty or poverty on education. How would you approach this? How many subparts are there in this question? Or are there any parts or not? Okay, talk about the parts. 3 parts, tell me.
Firstly, about poverty, like we give a brief about it and the impact of poverty in general, and then moving on to the education spare.
Okay, so what you're saying is you need to break down everything. You explain what is education or what is poverty, what is education, and then...
No, like the general idea of poverty,
Right.
like you said, talking about the context, and then moving on to the impact that it has in all these spheres, and then moving on to the educational part. Like
Okay, so
properly.
first going within a generic way and then going in a specific way. Is it what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Okay,
correct.
okay. Anyone else? How many subparts are there?
So we can also approach in a way in different phases also. That before 1991, the pace of poverty was very slow. And after that, we have seen from 1990s to 2025, we have much uplifted poverty in our country. So in both phases, we can compare how it impacted on education of the, and how education led to the upliftment of poor people from poverty line.
Okay, good enough. Yes. Yes, please.
So we can write it about impact of poverty in urban areas and rural areas, how it's affecting like the poor people living in urban slums and the rural poor people, how is that
So sectoral approach.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
So another could be analyzing how poverty impacts the career options that a person.
So first we'll try to substantiate this claim that yes, poverty leads to loss of education or decline in education qualities, right? So this we can talk about in terms of resource issues. It leads to higher dropout rates among the children, right? It also, because you are poor, you are also consuming less or less nutritious food, which means that you are also not, your brain is also not developing optimally. So it definitely has a positive correlation when it comes to education, right? And you can also substantiate it with various reports, as we have mentioned earlier, you have mentioned. So you can talk about those aspects as well. Then can I write that poverty is not the only reason for the decline in education? Right? We can say, we can generate this as a counter argument. Because definitely we know that it's not that if you are poor, you will have better education outcomes. This is not possible. So what we can do is, we can say that poverty is not the only reason why there is decline in the quality of education. We can talk about other reasons. So this will be our new dimension. So first we'll talk about how poverty leads to decline in the quality of education. We'll substantiate it with certain points. Then what we'll do is, we'll talk about how poverty is not the only reason. So what other reasons could be attributed now? Inequality, definitely yes. But inequality could also be an outcome of poverty, isn't it? Lack of infrastructure, yes, that is, or you can say that, see, poverty, when we say poverty, it is basically individual poverty, isn't it? It is not because, if I write that government spends less on the per capita or GDP investment here is less, right? In terms of its GDP. So here, if say government spends 3 or 2.5% of GDP on education, perhaps it needs to spend more. So that would be poor or resource constraint could be written, one of the points. Then what else could be written? In terms of that, our education quality is also not that good, because we are seeing that most of the students who come for education, they come for midday meals, right? So we need to make sure that quality of education is changed in alignment with national education policy, right? Then you can also talk about other, in terms of teacher training, issue of teacher training, teachers are not able to explain things in a way that is required, or you can mention other points. It doesn't matter what points you mention, but you can mention other points which goes against this correlation. So first you substantiate this correlation, and then you dismantle this correlation, or you provide certain points that does not support this claim. Okay? Fine. Then you think about, or in terms of general way of writing, or in terms of brainstorming, you'll think about ways to introduce the answer. In general, what we do or what we suggest is, if you do not know anything, start with the definition. Okay, so that's the simplest way. You can start with the definition of anything. And if possible, if some important institution has given the definition, that would be better. But even your general understanding of the term is good enough. Okay. In case you can think of any recent current affairs, that is the best approach in my opinion. Current affairs, anything that you have read in current affairs, you can write it here. Or it can be about any statistics, data, or about writing any paradoxical statement. So you can write, on one hand, India is poised to become the 4th largest economy in the world. On the other hand, the level of education in India is this and that. So just to show that on one hand we are prospering, but on the other hand, there is some problem. So you start with a paradox. That again is a very good way of starting introduction. So again, we'll talk about what are the ways of starting an introduction, but it is always a good idea to think before you start writing. Okay? Then you should think about what should be the major arguments that you are going to write. So if you want to write 4 arguments, you should think about the sequence in which you are writing. So your strongest argument should be at the first place. Then the second one, third and fourth. Right? So again, make sure that they are logically arranged. And not random in nature. Okay? And your strongest point should be at the first and then second, and so forth. So once you have written the main body, make sure that you use the conclusion which is different from introduction style. So definitely in the conclusion, you cannot define any term, right? You cannot do that. Maybe you can use current affairs. Maybe you can use other tools such as tools like SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So if there are 17 areas, for 17 topics you can use SDGs. 1 to 17 you have SDGs, and in 17 topics you can use SDGs, provided you know what these SDGs are. Then you can use constitutional ideas as well. You can use certain quotes from various thinkers. Maybe you can use quotes from Prime Minister Modi. For example, if the question comes with respect to war or something, you can write, this is not an era of war as mentioned by Prime Minister Modi, or things like that. So make sure that you use all these things very liberally and have a framework for this as well. Then once you are done with this, then think of what could be the way in which I can present these ideas. So one approach, when we talked about the evolution of civil services in India, we talked about from this period to this period, 1947 to 1991, second was 1991 to 2014, third this to present. The other thing could be to make certain diagrams like this. That, okay, from this period, this was a major focus. So again, anything like this time 1, 2, or 3. Okay. So again, it's not very scientifically accurate as such, but it shows, or it breaks the monotony for the examiner. Then the examiner will definitely reward you extra marks because you have shown your creativity as well, because it takes a considerable amount of time to present or start or write something like this, because it is very easier when it comes to geography or international relations. It is very easier to make a diagram or a map. But when it comes to questions like ethics or questions on governance, if you can present your ideas in a creative way, it definitely adds a lot of credibility to your answer. So this is what brainstorming will look like. You need to think about everything. You need to think about your introduction. You need to think about the structure that you are going to use in terms of the introduction. You need to think about the way you want to present your ideas. Then you need to prepare about the conclusion, and then you need to prepare about the presentation. This exercise you need to do for a couple of questions, and by that time you can do this exercise without using pen and paper on your mind, right? So make sure that first in the initial stages you do this exercise completely. And in fact, a lot of students do this exercise for essay preparation, right? So in essay, whenever you write, you cannot directly start writing an essay. You'll first start with what will be your thesis statement or your introduction. So here you may talk about any kind of anecdote. So you need to think about the anecdote that you are using. Then there will be an introduction to body transition. So there will be a transition to the body. In the body, you will talk about all the important subheadings, or how you are going to break it down into various components. Okay? All the subheadings you will think about. You'll think about certain reasons, justification, certain examples, all these aspects. And then in the conclusion, you will talk about the significance of addressing this particular problem. So basically, it will not be just a summary of what you have written. It will be more than that. Okay? So it will take your essay in a way forward-like manner. But the point is that you cannot directly start writing it on paper. You have to first draw this or use a rough sheet to first present or brainstorm all these ideas. Okay? Fine. So I'm sure that all of you already know why answer writing matters, but just for those who are uninitiated, let me just tell you. The first thing is why it is important is because if you look at the weightage, the overall weightage is 2025 marks, and the mains weightage is 1750, which is close to 86%. And it is possible for you to score or get a rank despite scoring poorly in the personality test. And we know how unpredictable the personality test can be. In fact, this has happened in the past as well. There was a student called Navita Kumari. She secured a rank of 251 with a PT score or the personality test of score of 155. Why? Because her mains marks was 820. Also, the classic example is Rachit Raj, who got an All India rank 3 in 2013 with a PT score of 138. So if you get even 138 marks, you can still get a rank in top 10, provided you have done really well at the main stage. Now here, as you see, the weightage from the toppers, how much they are scoring. In general, it's a good idea that if you want to get an interview call, you want to get around 810 or 820. That's a score that you are supposed to get. And for that, you need to secure good marks in GS, essay, and optional. So you need to have a little bit idea about how you're going to score here. In GS, scoring around 400 to 450. In essay, it has to be 100 to 120, or let's say it's 110. And optional, it could be about 270 to 280, or around 300. So this is how you will get around 820 or 840 marks in mains. That will reduce your dependency on interview. So if you manage to get a decent marks in the interview as well, along with a good score in the mains, you will end up in the top 10 or top 50 of the exam. But even if you do not get good marks here, just because of your mains marks, you will also definitely get certain rank. So make sure that you focus very well on the mains part of the examination. Here again, the rank one of last year also, he managed to get 200 marks in the interview, along with 899 in the mains. That led to his topping this exam. But if you look at the marks of All India rank 489, that person got 806 marks. So within certain marks, or 5% of the marks will take you outside the list as well. Okay. So the long story short, why it is important to practice answer writing is that it improves your articulation and clarity. Essentially, writing is about thinking only in a structured way. Okay. And if you have not done thinking, you will not be a good administrator. So this exercise basically helps you in improving your articulation and your clarity. How do you think? How do you break down a problem in its various components? And how do you explain what is to be done? So the step-by-step approach that you will take to solve a particular problem is basically what is being tested. And you need to practice it beforehand. It helps in effective utilization, revision of the content. So the content that you will be using in exam, you need to revise it several times. And one of the ways of revising it is by using it in the test series. Just by revising it through the paper without involving any mind will not be helpful too much. So make sure that instead of passive revision, you use active revision. And active revision through taking test, through answer writing. Then you need to enhance your time management skills. So you need to see how many questions are you attempting in 1 hour, in the next hour, and in the next hour. So you can develop a various kind of strategy. So a lot of students say that you must write one answer in 7 minutes or things like that, but you can divide that, you can divide your writing in various chunks. So in 1 hour, maybe you can write 6, then 7, then 7. Or you can divide it as per your strengths and weaknesses. Maybe initially you take some time to get that speed. So maybe what you can do is before starting to write, you practice something before, so that you get into the momentum, and in the initial time, it will take you less amount of time. So you need to devise any strategy. Maybe it can be 7, 7, 6, or things like that. But so you should maximize for 1 hour instead of maximizing it for one question, right? So make sure that you're doing it in several chunks. And definitely answer writing helps in content enrichment, because if you are using, or whenever you are writing answer, you should also be looking into the model answers as well. And this will also help you in updating your content as well. So make sure that you do this as well, right? So this is the basic importance of answer writing practice. And in the classes that we have planned, what we are going to discuss, this is the framework or the schedule. So first, we have already discussed in this orientation session about the key mistakes that you commit or students commit during mains, and what can be done for us to become mains ready. In the second class, or in the class 1 that we'll conduct, we'll talk about the various components. We have partially discussed about the components, but this will discuss in longish form in tomorrow's class, and what expectations UPSC has from you, straight from the notification. In the second class, we'll talk about how do we understand the context, and how do we understand the directive words that are given to us, because every directive words contain a certain significance. In the third class, we'll talk about the steps that is required to build the content, and integrating current affairs in our preparation in terms of how do we integrate it. Here I'll also talk about certain sources that you can use apart from the traditional sources that we are following. In the fourth class, we'll talk about how to improve upon the structure and how to basically improve the language so that it is at least written in the exam with minimum attention. Then last class, we'll talk about presentation tools that you can use and various kind of subject-wise value addition. In all of these classes, I'll be utilizing various toppers copies, and I'll be using questions that will be done by you, and we'll also discuss all these questions as well. Okay? So that is the basic framework. For you, the home assignment is, this is the home assignment for you. You need to write down the entire GS main syllabus in your own handwriting. That is the first exercise. From next time, the exercise will be slightly difficult, but from today, this is the thing that you're supposed to do. Make sure that you do it in a way that is basically in terms of various subjects. So that concludes today's session. Let me know if you have any doubts. Yes.
Why do we see this trend that why are we seeing this trend that a lot of even toppers are getting abysmally low scores in GS paper 3?
See, GS paper 3 is a combination of various subjects, as you know it, right? And it may happen that some of the students may not have prepared all the subjects holistically. That could be one reason. We don't know exactly the reason. We can just predict it. Second is, it requires a lot of analysis of data. So data, if you do not write it, maybe that will also lead to reduction in marks. Thirdly, it could just happen that the paper that came last year would be slightly difficult in nature. So again, that could be a lot of reasons why this is happening. Okay? Fine, thank you so much. We'll see you in the next class.